theme of, you mentioned social equity, and Bryn, I want to turn to you and ask, you were talking about the probable process of shocks in the transition. And I think this may be a no-duh advanced common sense answer to maybe a naive question, but let me ask it to you anyway. What are the conditions necessary in say, an industrialized society for a smooth transition to that post-fossil fuel economy?
Smooth transition? Well, we'd have to have the collective political will to impose pretty serious constraints on ourselves. And frankly, I'm pretty highly skeptical about that ever really unfolding. I think what we're really trying to do is build capacity and have these new ideas kind of in the wings, such that when the political will is all of a sudden there, because either it's an economic collapse or it's some massive climate crisis or something, we can scale those things up. And I think what you're talking about in terms of shifting those offsets from things that, just planting trees to building community resiliency and helping vulnerable populations, I think that's exactly the type of strategy that we need to be looking at in terms of investing in something that's going to remain valuable to us in any future. But in terms of the smooth transition, frankly, I think it's something a bit of a delusion. And I think we need to understand that shocks happen. Oil goes up to $150 and then collapses down again. That's going to happen over the next several years, that kind of volatility. The economic crisis that's happening now, that's going to be part of our future going forward. So it's really getting our heads out of the clouds to a certain extent and just saying, okay, that's part of how we have to go forward.
Mm-hmm. So we can turn for a moment in our remaining minutes, and I can't see very well. Are there questions in the audience? And if so, just speak them out so we can hear them up here.
Thank you. Through all of this, I did not hear, and I have not heard in the recent past, a discussion of the size of homes and living space and its impact on zero energy communities, zero energy homes, and its impact on mobility also, because the size then says they're spread out. So any comments on that, or when would that emerge as a significant issue for discussion?
Bill, you want to start with that one?
The housing crisis that we're experiencing right now really sets us up for that conversation. The home builders and increasingly in the U.S., we were in a market where being more and more dominated by large-scale home builders, merchant builders. And they are finally at a teachable moment. They are now really asking questions. And one of the questions they're asking was the assumption of what we were promoting in the marketplace had always been maximize the square footage of what you buy. Unfinished, or barely finished, and then add money into it over, but buy more than you can possibly use or afford in many cases. And, well, we saw where that got us. And so I think we will probably see a stabilization and maybe, hopefully, incremental home size coming back down. But no, we really can't sustain the huge homes, and they don't make sense.
Mm-hmm. So I know, Bryn, you, I think, have a follow-up as well.
When my wife and I moved from Alaska to Vancouver, we've lived in about 5 different places, and each one in sequence has been smaller. And then finally, this last one, we bought a 360 square foot condo that we gutted, redesigned entirely, and it's completely livable for the two of us. But there's no absolute limit that says you have to have this much space. It's really a cultural thing. And I think, under one scenario, we're able to build out enough green building that people live within maybe a slowly shrinking size. But under another scenario, we just have to get more people into our existing building stock. And so I think we'll see that it's going to be housing prices, economic constraints, all these kind of real world issues that are really going to push us to be much more efficient in the way we use our building stock going forward.
Thank you. So are there other questions in the audience? I have.
Question.
Yes.
It's kind of long.
Well, we've got exactly a minute to answer it. So if you do a quick question, we'll get a quick answer.
Okay. See. How can we make people conscious of the environmental issues that we face today instead of merely being consumers? How can we do that when the market that we live in, the world we live in, companies we work for are dependent on keeping people on that level of consumerism? So to simplify that, how does a designer who's also slash an artist, ideally, how do we work in a, it's really about an issue of ideals versus reality.
Okay, so I think the way to do this, because it is a remarkably important question, let's each take, say, 10, 15 seconds and just give a quick insight around how to do this. You're all doing pretty interesting work, and you confront this all the time. Let's start with you, Bryn.
Well, I think good design arises out of constraints. And so I think if you use yourself as an example, pick something in a constraint and impose it on your life. We had a garbage strike in Vancouver that went for 3 months, and people were complaining. So during that period, my wife and I, we said, okay, we're not going to create any garbage. So for 3 months, we rearranged the way we buy food, do everything, the way we purchase, to produce no garbage whatsoever. And we don't do that anymore, but we've really changed how we do it, and we can share that with people. But I think really taking your personal life and making a real example of it.
Great. John?
That's a really hard question.
Yes, it is.
In addition to just living your values, you can try to find ways to put your skills and talents to work as well, doing these sorts of things. There are lots of career opportunities, I think, now that are involved with all these different things. So searching those out and trying to be a part of it yourself is something that you could do.
Bill, you're going to have the last word on this question.
Pardon the obscenity here. Don't design ugly crap.
Hear ye. And on that note...
And what I mean by that is design things that are beautifully designed that will last.
Yes.
And one of my favorite examples of that in the building is one of the buildings we've been studying a lot lately is an office building that Frank Lloyd Wright designed that was opened 70 years ago and is used now by the grandchildren of the original workers in that factory office building. It's a Johnson Wax building. People still love working in there. They're still using the original furniture, the original space design 70 years after it was done.
Excellent. On that note, I want to thank all three of you for excellent presentations and insight, and thank you very much.